Hello guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we are continuing the series I started here with NHL teams that have the brightest futures in all of the entire league, and we are breaking down, yes, the New Jersey Devils. It'll be myself alongside fellow hockey YouTuber, one of the better hockey YouTubers in the game, has had a fantastic past year regarding his hockey content, and that is diehard New Jersey Devils fan, Joe from the Hockey Skatedown. I've had many people, Devils fans in particular, that have hoped that this would come to fruition, this kind of collaboration. I'm really happy to get this thing going. Joe's a great guy, has great hockey content, not just for the Devils, but all teams throughout the NHL, like my channel. So make sure to check out his. I'll have in the description down below, but this is going to be a great discussion breaking down everything there is to know about this Devils club between how they fared last season in a summary, breaking down all their offseason moves, the draft, their stellar prospect pool, that's one of the better ones in the entire NHL already, and how it all shapes together for them to have one of the most promising futures in the NHL. So get ready, guys. Stay until the end of this video to find out all the deets and all our thoughts on the New Jersey Devils and why exactly they have such a bright future.
Yeah, I'm good.
Hey, Joe, thanks so much for coming on. How are you?
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the intro. I really appreciate you asking me to be a part of this. I really like this segment that you're doing on your channel, and I'm honored to be part of it.
Awesome. Well, that means a lot always. It's been an absolute blast to have all these different people, whether it's hockey YouTubers or just hockey minds and fans overall, come on to do this series. So regarding your Devils, just to start things off, how are you feeling? Not even breaking down anything yet, just really where they currently are and everything that you've seen transpire over this past year.
Well, I actually like where they are right now. They could still do some more heading into the rest of free agency and leading into the season, whenever that starts, either January or February, like they're saying. But I like what Fitzgerald has done. If anything could go wrong with the Devils, it did last year. Losing, having to fire the GM, having to fire the coach, having to trade away your best player in Taylor Hall, having to trade away a captain that was beloved by fans and he's been with the organization for a long time, having to trade a fan favorite in Blake Coleman, who I absolutely love, and congratulations to him on winning the Stanley Cup. But it was a very hard year for the Devils, and a lot of question marks heading into last year are still prevalent this year. Question marks with Jack Hughes, with PK Subban, Nikita Gusev. All the acquisitions that were made last year still play questions into this year. So I really like what Fitzgerald has done this offseason. Trading and acquiring Andreas Janssen. You're adding a young, good winger who I think will have a boom production, especially playing more with the Devils, maybe getting more power play time, more ice time. I think you'll see his production levels go up. I like what he added with Ryan Murray. I think he's a good defenseman, especially getting him on a one year left on his deal, kind of a show me deal. Same thing with Kulikov, getting him for signing him for 1 year. And adding that element that he wanted to do this year, adding more of a competitive team, a harder team to play against. And I love what, signing Corey Crawford, I think really helped this team out as well, being a mentor to Mackenzie Blackwood. I like the whole situation with, not having that whole Corey Schneider thing in the background where, it was one of those inconsistencies throughout the year where he'd play bad and then towards the end of the year, he'd play better, where it leaves the following year into a question where it's, should we hold on to him or should we decide what to do with him?
Exactly.
So I really love what Fitzgerald has done. I like what Shiro has done prior to him as well. I know what happened with him was unfortunate, but I really like the mold of the brotherhood that they're really trying to build with this team. And right now you're really seeing a shape up of future prospects that could really make up this team. You're seeing players that could actually go into certain spots in the lineup, and it's very intriguing for Devils fans, and it's something to look forward to.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And it's funny because, I'm a Rangers fan, as you know, and I cover all teams in the NHL. Normally, I wouldn't be as excited necessarily talk about one of their more coveted rivals, but I have to say I've really admired what Fitzgerald has done so far as GM. It has really been intriguing. I think he's making really all the proper steps into putting the Devils in a very strong spot for not just the short-term future, but the long-term future. And I think that really goes in hand as to why we're talking about them today. But to go back a little bit further, really just summarizing what happened with them last year, we all know things started off, there was all this hype going into last offseason with bringing in Nikita Gusev. Okay, maybe it could be Panarin 2.0. There were, of course, those comparisons type thing. Then you had Jack Hughes and Kaapo Kakko, in which they both didn't have strong years. We know this. It makes sense as to why both didn't fare well nearly as much as one would have hoped, at least, especially for Hughes' case. I give him more of the benefit of the doubt, honestly, because when you look at Hughes, he didn't have many guys around him really trying to get rolling, and he hasn't fully developed yet. Hughes is undersized. He has a lot of growing that he's going to do, and you need to be patient with guys of his skill level and ceiling. So they go into the season, and PK Subban as well, at first glance, seemed like a good deal. Looking back on it, can't say so much now. We'll break down him further, but things just don't go right for the Devils. Taylor Hall gets traded. You win that trade easily, however. At the time, maybe you were a little suspect with not necessarily getting a massive piece. You get guys, I believe. I'm pretty sure that it was Ball and Merkley a part of that deal. So those were more the key pieces there, along with the first round pick, obviously. But looking back now, things are great. Taylor Hall's with the Buffalo Sabres now, and the Devils didn't make playoffs. We know this. They were one of the bottom feeders last year. Really changing things up, trading Andy Green to the rival in the Islanders, as you mentioned. And I can only imagine you as a Devils fan, him being a longtime captain. Obviously, that stings a little bit, but you understand the reasoning at the end of the day. Because if my memory serves me correct, I believe they got at least a second round pick for him. So in general, the Devils, a lot has changed with them over this past year, and they went from originally looking like they were going to be playoff contenders to now they're kind of in a rebuild, but they made a lot of great things happen since then. But if you look at them just this past season, to summarize, guys like Kyle Palmieri had another strong year, even with that depleted offense, 45 points, 25 goals, 20 assists. Nikita Gusev, say what you will about his defensive game. He still put up the numbers again at 44 points in his first rookie year in the NHL, including 13 goals and 31 assists. We'll see if he can be more consistent in both ends of the ice next season. Nico Hischier, who I'm a huge fan of. Hischier is honestly one of my favorite two-way centerman in the entire NHL. He's so underrated, and I get it that there is necessarily a lot of hype with him being former first overall pick. So the guy not putting up necessarily 50 plus numbers consecutive years in a row is going to cause people to maybe overlook him a little bit, but his defensive game is great, and he's still so young. He had 14 goals, 22 assists last year. Jesper Bratt, another guy who I honestly love for the Devils. I hope he gets a lot more opportunities next season for them. 16 goals, 16 assists, 32 points. Pavel Zacha, I want to know your thoughts on Zacha. We'll get to him in a minute because he, another former first round pick, hasn't really lived up to par as all Devils fans would have liked to hope at this point in time. He had 32 points. And then Blake Coleman, he's really a grinder. He does it all every single time he's on the ice. He's not a fun guy to go up against for sure. And the Devils made a great trade there in getting that first round pick and Nolan Foote, who's one of their more coveted prospects now. And then you get on to Damon Severson, a solid defenseman in the AHL, 31 points, 8 goals, 23 assists. Travis Zajac, the veteran on the team, he's been there through thick and thin with this team over the past decade. 25 points, 9 goals, 16 assists. Taylor Hall, we all know that 25 points in 30 games before his departure. And then guys like Wayne Simmons, who eventually got dealt to the Buffalo Sabres, had 24 points. Miles Wood is a guy where I feel like there is still some more that we can necessarily see from him if he's around a better offense, because he does have a lot of attributes in a way, in my opinion at least, of a guy like Tom Wilson. And I think if he's in the better scenery, if you will, having more help, whether it's, the center and the opposing wing, because the Devils, when you look at their offense, they obviously aren't on the same par of like the Capitals, for instance, in the role that Wilson has in that top six. So I think there is potential there for Wood to take that next step still, because he's still fairly young. 23 points, 11 goals, 12 assists. And then Sammy Vatanen, he was dealt to the Carolina Hurricanes. We know this. Injury prone throughout his career, really. 23 points. Jack Hughes, 21 points, 7 goals, 14 assists. An underwhelming rookie year for a first overall pick. But again, benefit of the doubt. He needs some time to develop. You're not going to put him in the AHL because it really wouldn't do him much justice. And he just needs time to grow. It's going to be something that I expect him to have some major strides next season, because he's going to have a lot of help on those wings that he didn't necessarily have the year prior. And then you have other guys, PK Subban, 18 points, a real down year for him. We know this. Will Butcher, 21 points. He's been a very suspect defenseman that I'm curious to see your thoughts on in a minute. And then that's basically, you go down the list, it's other guys that are basically fringe in the AHL. Jesper Boquist, one of your more coveted prospects, really didn't do much in roughly 40 games with the Devils last season, so I'm curious to see what exactly his ceiling will be. And then when you get onto the goaltending, Mackenzie Blackwood is, in my mind, one of the best up-and-coming goaltenders in all of the NHL. You cannot overlook this guy. People that are, say, giving him the benefit, not giving him enough benefit of the doubt. This guy, he had a goals allowed average of 2.77, and a save percentage of 915, 22 wins, 14 losses, while being with a defense in front of him that was one of the worst in the entire NHL, and an offense that isn't going to help the beat by any stretch of the imagination. I thought he had a great year. He was honestly on the verge of being around a top 10 goaltender in the season for me last year. That's how good and high I viewed him. And then you had other guys like Corey Schneider and Louis Domingue at times before their departures. Schneider's with the Islanders and now probably going to be in the AHL next year. But now we know everything that's happened with him this past year. What are your initial thoughts on basically guys that I mentioned, especially in whether it's Jesper Boquist, who spent a good amount of time in the AHL in his rookie year, and other guys too, whether it's Will Butcher, for instance, who I know a lot of Devils fans either, they feel that he can get his game back from his rookie year, or they feel that he's kind of, a hit or miss.
Yeah, Will Butcher, he had a really strong first year coming in. And, since then he has tailed off. He has looked like a not as good offensively, running the power play. I know he played quarterback on the power play to start this year, and it didn't fare well. They tried him. They tried Subban, and it didn't work. And then when they tried Vatanen towards the end of the year, I really liked it because he played very well as a power play specialist.
That's what he's known for.
Yeah, and that trade really stung. But I like what we got in return. But Will Butcher, I hope he can return to form. When you have a defense of Will Butcher, PK Subban, Damon Severson, Dakota Mermis, Frederick Claesson, Connor Carrick, it's not an all-star. Yeah, Freddie Claesson. I know he was a Ranger at one point, but and I like Dakota Mermis. I would have liked the Devils to have brought him back, but I really like what they added to this team as favor of defense. I really think that adding Murray and adding Kulikov will change this defense around. I think Smith will honestly make the team this year, so it's going to be a totally different dynamic. But, Will Butcher, I hope he could have a bounce back year. A lot of Devils fans were kind of hoping either one of him or Severson might get moved this offseason, maybe to bring in a good asset like another pick or a prospect. But, I like him on the team, and hopefully he can have a bounce back year.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's fair to say that while the Devils, as you mentioned, everything did go wrong with them last year, you did at least get to see some strides in the younger guys to expect going forward. And now they're in a spot, you bring Fitzgerald in after the departure of Ray Shero. And it was very interesting because I even touched on this in a previous video. I believe you did as well, where, could the Devils possibly do an offer sheet this offseason? We'll get to the draft and everything else, but Fitzgerald, one of the main reasons why he was brought in is that ability to, in fact, do an offer sheet should it present itself, should they feel that they're comfortable in doing it. That's something that is so taboo in today's NHL. It's always been. Marc Bergevin for the Montreal Canadiens said, screw it, I'm going to do it last year for Sebastian Aho. It didn't go as planned because he lowballed him, so Don Waddell said thank you very much, and they signed him off, no problem. But it was a good indication, at least, to see someone breaking through the ice, even if it wasn't fully. So the Devils, in an interesting spot, really in this rebuild, they're like, we don't have anything to lose. Why not do something like that to get a young, controllable defenseman like, I don't know, Mikhail Sergachev? Now, granted, It does seem like it's stretching it. I expect the Tampa to work their magic and somehow free up all this cap space. They'll have to give up prospects and some picks more than likely. But still, the fact that the Devils have that opportunity and Fitzgerald was brought in as a factor into why, I think that's a good indication just on the forefront of the kind of GM that you can expect with him. And then when you go further than that, how he has handled this offseason, in my opinion, has been superb. If we go to the lengths of now the draft, before we get into the deeper involvement of the trades and the signings, if you will, between getting Alexander Holtz, who is one of the best goal scoring prospects in the entire NHL now. I just did a prospect ranking list on my video over the top 20 prospects. I had Holtz really, really high, and some people were wondering, why do you have Alexander Holtz so high? I'm like, well, if you look at his actual analytics and what is expected of him, he's expected to easily be a 30 plus 40 goal scorer at the NHL level consistently. It's going to make Devils fans forget about Ilya Kovalchuk pretty easily. So I think you bring him in that dynamic really as soon as next year. If they do in fact sign him to an ELC, I'm not sure if that's going to happen. I think that there is that chance though, because he seems all the capability to transition to the NHL next season. He will be in that top six right away and to help out with guys. And really imagine a guy like Alexander Holtz just alongside, whether it's Nico Hischier, for instance, and then, Jack Hughes. I want to know, do you think Hughes is going to probably play more of the left wing than the center? It kind of seems they're going that direction right now. I could be wrong, though. But just Holtz in itself was great. But then you go further and they decide to rack up another great goal scorer in Dawson Mercer. Mercer is arguably the third best goal scorer out of this great 2020 draft class, outside of not just, the other guys really the top three, but you had Alexander Holtz, and then you had I don't know why I'm blanking on names right now, but Seth Jarvis went before him. People were making the argument between those two, and Jack Quinn. Jack Quinn, and I would say Jack Quinn and Holtz were probably the two best goal scorers. And then when you get to three, there was a big debate between guys like Jarvis and then also guys like Mercer and to an extent Gunler, even though he fell in the second round. So getting Mercer was huge, and then they rounded out that defense towards the end with the 20th overall pick and my guy Shakir Mukhamadullin. No one knows about him. I knew about him. I discussed him on previous videos on my channel doing mock drafts, so it was cool to see him get drafted in the first round. But what are your thoughts basically on that first round in general and the kind of draft that Todd Fitzgerald had in his first year as GM?
I thought it was an awesome draft. I love what he did in the first round. When I did my reaction video, I was more happy about not that the way it all turned out, but I was more ecstatic that we got Mercer. Holtz was a surprise to me, but I still love that pick. I think that going over Rossi, going over Perfetti, to me, they're probably the players that would have the higher ceiling. But getting Holtz, he's just a pure sniper. He's a goal scorer at every which angle. They said they compare his shot to being a young Laine-like shot, and the kid is just really good at shooting and scoring. So that's exactly what the Devils need. They need a scorer on the wings of Hischier and Hughes. I love it now. The more I think about it, I know a lot of fans wanted Rossi really bad, having him fall to the Devils, and even Buffalo fans. They were shocked that they didn't pick up Rossi or Perfetti either.
And that's a discussion for another day. They picked the wrong 67. Not that Quinn's bad, but seriously, Marco Rossi was just 6 foot. He would have been a top 4 talent.
Yeah, but Holtz and Quinn, going to those two teams, I really like Buffalo grabbing Quinn. I think he's going to help out Jack Eichel's game and really be a stable on their wings.
Yeah, you can't go wrong.
Yeah, I think him exactly like you said it. It's Holtz was probably one of the best goal scorers in the draft. Then after him was Quinn, and then they said Gunler was right after him. And I actually did a video. I wanted either Jarvis or Gunler or even Goalie to fall to us at 18, but I love grabbing Mercer. I think this kid's going to be a phenomenal talent. They kind of compare him to a young Patrice Bergeron. And when you see in clips of him, this kid can stick handle in a photo booth. He's really good at stick handling. He plays an awesome game defensively and offensively. I know he can get caught puck watching a lot, and he had some issues with some bad checks that hurt some people. So he's going to have to work on that, translating to the NHL. And his stick handling, he does a little too much. But this kid is a powerhouse. He's got a good shot. He's good with his passing. He has high hockey IQ. I think he's going to be a phenomenal talent for the Devils, and I think he's going to be a staple either as on center or right wing, which he was drafted. And grabbing Shakir Mukhamadullin, I'm sorry, I can't pronounce his name.
I believe, and this is the English pronunciation. It's Mukhamadullin.
Yeah, all right, yeah, I like grabbing him. A lot of Devils fans were upset with the whole trade that happened with the Rangers trading up to grab Schneider. I know a lot of Devils fans were upset about that because the Devils want a physical defenseman, but I'm going to mention a couple later that will kind of ease Devils fans' minds. Mm-hmm. But I think grabbing him at 20 was a good option. And I think that the Devils grabbing a name that was so off the board, I don't think they were necessarily going for Schneider. I think they had this guy in mind, and a lot of teams were actually looking at him, and the Devils really jumped on him. This kid is good. He's big. He's, I think, 6'4", 176 or so pounds. So once he adds a couple of pounds of muscle, this kid can move the puck up the ice. He can shoot. He's good on the power play, and he plays a very good defensive game. So I love what the Devils did in this first round. And, hopefully these three we will see sooner rather than later in a lineup. But I think Holtz is, like you said, about a year away. Mercer probably around 2 years away, maybe 3, but I really like what I see from him. And Mukhamadullin, I don't know how long he's going to be, but he's definitely going to be a project in the works. But I think that with him playing more and having more offensive production, I think he's on the track to becoming an NHL regular a little bit sooner.
I agree, and I think I'm glad that you mentioned Schneider too, because yeah, in my mind, from everything that we saw, and no, I don't think the Rangers specifically took Schneider to call off the Devils. I think what
No.
happened was the Rangers knew that there was interest in Schneider from a team like the Devils, them being right there. So that's why they felt the need to jump up, because the Rangers had Schneider on their board as well, and they apparently really coveted him. But I know that for the Devils' sake, at least, given the fact that they had Shakir right away, if I had to guess what their prospect board looked like when it came to defensemen of their interest, it was probably Schneider at 1 and then Shakir at 2. So they probably just went as soon as Schneider was off the board. All right, we're going to go with our second guy we feel comfortable with, which is perfectly fine. I think thought that was a very strong move. Another guy that isn't as talked about, I discussed him in previous videos with mock drafts with my buddy Steven, Statboy Steven on Twitter. He's a great guy in Hockey Mind. He's followed him a lot more than I have. He was the one who thought that if there's any guy that would be an off the board picked up in the first round, it would be him. He had him going to the Leafs at 15, and he just falls to 20 to the Devils, so not far off. But Muka Madolin is a really strong prospect, and we'll break down him and all of them more when we actually discuss their prospect pool. But again, the first round was great. I thought it was one of the best drafts the Devils have had in quite some time, really, without having luck on their side, if that makes sense. They were smart and strategic with their picks in that first round. It's not like they just got the first overall pick again. It's a fairly easy choice when you have guys like Jack Hughes and Nico Heishers of the world. They had to actually do some digging here and feel what was most comfortable for the team, and I think they made the perfect picks. Truly, Holt's a great talent, and we'll break down him more, but you go outside that first round, you saw some other strong picks. Nico Dawes, I thought, was a nice pick for them as well, the goaltending prospect, because we all know that the Devils, they feel comfortable in Blackwood, but with any team that has goaltending as it is, you want to add more depth, and I thought Dawes was a nice pickup. Overall, I thought the Devils had one of the better drafts in the entire NHL. And then when you get on to how they have tackled this offseason, really since the start. Bringing in guys, as you touched on as well, Dmitry Kulikov, adding to that depth. You can't go wrong with helping some younger guys in the lineup too, like Ty Smith, that we will get to eventually. And then you have other guys too when it comes to trades. Like, they have really wowed me when it came to their trades. Gain Ryan Murray on that complete salary dump, because Columbus is freeing up things for good reasons. They have Dubois that they need to worry about. They want to bring in a big name goal scorer. I know that they want Hoffman Hart, I'm sure, one of him or Granlund. So we'll see what happens, because everything has just been so dead this past month in free agency. But the Devils, they have made strong moves there. Bringing in Andreas Janssen for just Joey Anderson. Nothing against Joey Anderson, but he's no Andreas Janssen. I think that was a great deal. And now you bring in already a solidified top 6 winger, just like that. A guy that has youth on his side. He's still only in his early 20s. Just came off of a great rookie year, and then is dealing with an injury that had him out for the majority of last season. He's a guy that, with the right type of centerman as well, if he is in fact say alongside a Heischer, if you will, or even Zajac to an extent, I think he can make good things happen. And then you look at the Corey Crawford signing. Perfect deal. So smart for the Devils side of things for 2 things. One, you get him on a 2-year deal, which means that you're not locked up to him long term if you say want to trade him off, if he does in fact do well, say after a season or even a portion of the season with the Devils. Because while he's going to be a great mentor to a guy like Mackenzie Blackwood, the Devils are still in this rebuild stage right now. So they're going to continue to trade off some veteran assets that they have in this lineup. Same thing could even be mentioned with Kyle Palmieri, for instance. I know
you were going there, Tyler.
I'm sorry. But I mean, if you want to focus on the future, that's what they're going to do. And I expect them to kind of do a retool a little bit in that sense. But let me put it this way. If they have a young goaltender that they know that they can feel confident in going forward, or signing a cheaper backup, they will have no problem trading away Corey Crawford in return for possibly, a nice high second round pick, if you will, depending on what the team is. So those opportunities are present now, and the Devils are taking advantage of their cap space. That's what I'm really impressed with. They have roughly 20 mil as it is in cap space still. They have plenty of things that they can make happen this offseason. So in general, what is probably the biggest acquisition that you've enjoyed the most this offseason for the Devils side of things?
I guess the Janssen trade was a shock to me. Losing Joey Anderson, I think Joey Anderson's no doubt he's going to be a good player when he reaches his potential. I think he's going to be a good player for Toronto. I hope Toronto fans, I know they know it was a cap dump, but he's going to be a special player. And I kind of wanted to see him develop with the Devils, but I love what we got in Janssen. And I'm kind of curious to see why they call him Mango. So I'm waiting to hear how he got that.
I didn't even know that, so I'm glad you brought that up. Now I learned something.
Yeah, and he's a well-loved guy with Toronto fans. Toronto fans loved him. The players loved him. So I'm curious to see how he's going to play in this lineup. Is he going to play with Nico Hischier and really fill out that first line with Hischier and Palmieri? Is he going to play with Jack Hughes, kind of be like his left wing? And, there's going to be a need for a right wing on that side. So the Devils still need a couple of things to add. The offseason can stop now and be fine, where I think Fitzgerald did do enough to make this team more competitive. But with like everything we were talking about before with the whole offer sheet, I just think this is 1 year they should really jump on it and do it, because you're never going to get the opportunity where so many teams are cash strapped and you can make a move like this. And, for a first year GM to do it, it takes a big pair to do that. But I don't think we'll do that. But there's still going to be trades that are going to be happening, especially if the league is going to go in January. You're going to see a lot of movement happen relatively soon for teams to get below the cap. And I know they can be a little bit over the cap for a certain duration, but I think they're going to want to get ahead of that before other teams start to make moves. But I really love what Fitzgerald did. I think bringing in Murray, who has 1 year left, bringing in Kulikov, it's genius, because what happens is if, for any sake, the Devils don't have a good year, which I think they'll be better than last year, but, there'll still be that fringe team trying to get into the playoffs. But, it's good because it's asset management too, because you could have them for, if they don't work out, you can move them for an asset, and it's only for 1 year. So I think both of those deals were genius. I think the Crawford thing adds a lot of the Crawford signing adds a lot to Mackenzie Blackwood. I think you're going to see him. I just think that's going to be such a good tandem. You have the relief of having a goaltender who could steal some games for you if Mackenzie needs a night off, because towards the end of the year, this guy was getting peppered. I mean, peppered with shots. He was getting shots of 40 plus shots a night, 45, and he was holding his own each and every game. Playing very sound positionally. Rarely got off a position, and he was playing really well. So I love Blackwood. I really do. I think he's developing into a nice goaltender. A lot of the Devils team loves this guy. He's if you know any goalies, or if you play goalie, Tyler, goalies are a special breed of people. They're very
awfully unique.
Yeah, and they're fun to be around. So all Devils players always, when they're asked the question, who's the best guy in the locker room? Of course, it's going to be PK, because he's out there and he's hysterical. But one of the names that's always up there is Blackwood. So I really like what he's doing, and I really like them bringing in Crawford. I think it's going to help both of their games out for the next 2 years at least.
Yeah, and that's a great point too about goaltenders. Yeah, they normally are, a nut either for the better or for the worse, because at the end of the day, why do you want to get, roughly 100 mile an hour slap shots thrown at you, right? Like it takes a special breed of people. But no, Blackwood, that's a very interesting thought as well, to him be so coveted. I would hope so. He's a young, controllable goaltender that didn't have much expectations at first. It wasn't like this guy was a high draft pick or anything like that. And he has really come into his own while being in his early 20s. I'm very excited to see how his battles are going to be going forward with that rest of Metropolitan Division when it comes to younger goaltenders, because you have, for the Rangers' sake, we have Igor Shesterkin, obviously. For the Flyers, you have Carter Hart. And, people view Carter Hart as the Carey Price of Philly. It's just a matter of time. So, and then you have for the Islanders, even though he's more towards the latter half of his 20s, and Ilya Sorokin. I'm really excited for him. And then you have for the Capitals in Samsonov. So a lot of really fun young goaltenders that are going to be doing it out next season in the Metropolitan Division. Blackwood is definitely going to make his case to be one of, if not the best of that group. We'll see what happens. But the Devils are in a great spot right now. And regarding an offer sheet, you're right. I was under that impression as well. If there's any time to say take advantage of this flat cap era and having cap space, unlike basically every other team in the NHL, why not do it? So It is something where I really hope it happens. I genuinely hope it happens, even for the Devils' sake, because I want this breaking of the ice to happen, because it'll have a domino effect, I would hope, in the NHL. But we'll see what happens there. If Fitzgerald can make that become a reality, he will have options. And Tampa does look susceptible. We know this. They have a lot on
Yeah.
their plate as it is. You can make the argument to say maybe going after a guy like Cirelli, for instance, but my counter would be they're far more likely to at least be able to keep Cirelli, given what you would have to give him kind of quite a bit of an overpayment, I would imagine, in order to price Cirelli away from being
Yeah.
matched. And the guys, too, have to make sure that they want to sign the deal. So Sergachev is an interesting spot because if he wants to, in fact, have a long-term deal and have some controllability, knowing that he's going to be stuck somewhere long-term and not have to worry about doing this contract dispute in, say, another year or two if he would sign a bridge with the Tampa, which could happen. Don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
because they just won the Stanley Cup. It's hard to take a player away from that. But in his case, at least, he has youth on his side. So it's in the sense where he could have a long-time career now. He's already won. And if he wants the money now to be solidified and have more playing time too, because granted, he's gotten plenty of time in Tampa, but there's no doubt in my mind he would be averaging over 20 minutes a night, every single night for the New Jersey Devils through everything that they're going through. Like, he would be the face of that blue line by far. Whereas he's overshadowed far and away in Tampa because of Victor Hedman. And then even guys like Ryan McDonagh when they're healthy. They're so deep in every aspect of that lineup. He would be in a completely different spot should he accept an offer sheet going his way from the Devils. So that's a guy to consider as well. I was thinking Ryan Pulock for a bit, honestly, as a sleeper, but he went through arbitration and everything. There's a couple other guys that come to mind to me as well that I could see as possibly an offer sheet, but Sergachev is definitely the most coveted guy. We know this, but Oh, and I also mentioned too, because I talked about this with the Rangers, a guy like Vince Dunn from St. Louis is a guy that would make perfect sense. I would love him on the Rangers, and I'm sure you would love him on the Devils because St. Louis has little or no cap space right now. They need to free it up. I don't know how they're going to free it up. They want to get rid of one of those contracts in, Schwartz, Bozak, or Steen. But the reality is if that doesn't happen, the guy is deserving of at least a decent upgrade. He's a very solid, more stay-at-home defenseman, bigger body defenseman, and the Devils could bring him in on a very cheap deal where the only compensation that they would probably have to give up, if I had to guess, would either be a third-round pick or maybe a second and a third, because I'm blanking exactly what the compensation are depending on the numbers. I don't have them in front of me, but it wouldn't be a first round or anything like that. So, because there are better arguments to be had with saying why the Devils maybe wouldn't do an offer sheet for Sergachev, knowing that they would have to cough up quite an amount for a team that isn't a rebuild. You don't necessarily want to get rid of draft stock when you know those picks are probably going to be high for at least another year. So a guy like Vince Dunn, you could think about him going forward, but I agree. I'm really excited to see what the Devils' future holds, not just, for next season, but going down the line, because how this offense is set up is great. And I want to know exactly what your thoughts are on a guy like Jesper Bratt, because he has always stood out to me. And I know that he has fluctuated a bit when it comes to his play, but he's a guy that I think has more potential than, say, the casual hockey fan will tell you.
Yeah, Jesper Bratt's a very underrated player. I'm glad you brought him up because he doesn't get the love that he deserves. I know he doesn't put up the points that a lot of other players do, but he's fast. He's zippy out there. His edge work is phenomenal. I really like Jesper Bratt, and I know now he needs a new deal as well, like Mackenzie Blackwood. Mm-hmm. So I hope he gets re-signed to a favorable deal. I think now if you could lock him into a longer-term bridge deal would be favorable for both sides. Because especially with the cap, that's going to eventually go up when all this is over. But
yeah, probably 2 years.
Yeah. So if you could sign him into a favorable deal, I love Jesper Bratt. I think he's one of the most underrated players. Yeah, I really hope that they bring him back on a favorable deal.
Yeah, I agree. I'm excited to see what role he will be in with this Devils team, because now they have a better supporting cast that can really help him get rolling in that top nine. And then when you look at, I guess, the defense now, too, you have a guy like Damon Severson, who has been a very solid, reliable defenseman for the Devils. He hasn't necessarily been overly flashy when it comes to his defensive play, but he can put up the numbers. He has contributed both 5-on-5 and special teams, but now you have them in a situation where they don't need to have everything on his shoulders either, and you have younger guys coming in. I think this is a good segue to go into the prospect pool now as to why it's so deep here with guys like Ty Smith leading the way. From every Devil fan that I've talked to, and I even literally just at the time of recording this, I had a Devils fan, I believe a Devils fan at least, commenting on my video as to why Ty Smith wasn't ranked in a certain position for my prospect videos because he's so good. And I'm like, I get it. Ty Smith is a great puck moving defenseman, but how excited are you for Ty Smith? What was your original reaction when he was drafted, and what do you expect from him going into next season?
When he fell to the Devils, I was ecstatic. I really didn't think he would fall to us. I thought he would go much earlier in the draft. And, he's a phenomenal talent. He's a great two-way defender, back-to-back WHL defenseman of the year. The kid could put up points. He's a good defenseman in our prospect pool. I think he's really going to lead this team, especially being a power play specialist that he is. But hopefully he can make the team this year. I know he's had 2 strong camps with us. The past camp, he kind of faltered off towards the end. But I always look at it when you get sent down, it's a chance to work on your game. You know what it takes to get back to that level, and you know what it's going to take to work hard to get back to where you have to go or get over that hump to really establish yourself. I really think there's good things ahead with Ty Smith. I really think he's going to be a good defenseman. It's going to take him some time. He's a bit undersized.
Yeah, he's 5'11".
Yeah, he's not the biggest defenseman out there, and he's not going to be the Chara, like a defenseman where he's going to be banging bodies around. Mm-hmm. So with him, you're going to get kind of like that Will Butcher kind of play with a higher ceiling, a much higher ceiling.
Yeah, much higher ceiling.
You're going to rely on your quickness, your stick work, your hockey IQ just to get around certain positions. But, from what I gather, he's a great prospect for us. And I think he's going to be a phenomenal talent. And it's going to take him some time, but, once he gets into our system, I think he'll do well.
Yeah, I think Smith is in a position, and just to basically summarize him, because I do this normally regarding prospects, he was drafted in the first round back in 2018, as we know, and this past year in the WHL, he had 59 points in 46 games, so great, literally by far over a point per game, including 19 goals and 40 assists, and then the year prior, he had 69 points in 57 games, including 7 goals and 68 assists. The playmaking, the passing, that vision is all there. He commands that power play without question. He keeps that puck and he can be aggressive into that offensive zone, but he isn't nearly as wary as, say, offensively minded defenseman when it comes to his transition game. If he gets caught, he can very well catch up much better than a lot of these other defensive prospects in the NHL, which is why he's going to probably have a smooth transition into pro hockey next year, at least starting probably with the Bennington Devils. We'll see what happens. If I had to guess, there's a chance of Smith starting the season with the Devils if he does in fact wow them in camp. That's how I've been saying with a lot of certain prospects around the league. If he really blows them away, okay, maybe he starts at least the first couple games and then goes from there. Realistically, though, if we see him starting the AHL, I could see him at least playing half a season in there and then being called up, especially if, say, they trade away one of those contracts that are just a one-year deal, because I think Kulikov's only a one-year deal. I think Murray they're going to keep. I don't expect them to trade Murray. I think he's a guy that they'll want to keep long-term if he could be healthy, because he still has the age on his side. So, if a trade presents itself, especially, I could see Smith playing a significant part of the after the trade deadline, if you will. That would make a lot of sense to me. But he's a guy that is expected to have a huge impact with them. I'm excited for him a lot because the Devils need that puck-moving defenseman. They thought they were getting it in PK Subban. We obviously know that just isn't the case to what they would have liked. Subban's past his prime. We know this, but we really know this now. So the bigger question is, how long is it going to take Smith to be that NHL regular? I don't think it's going to take too long. I think throughout over this next year, between not just next season but the following season, because it'll all be in 2021, we're going to see major strides for him and taking advantage with that great young up and coming offense in that top 6. And then when you get to other guys too, Muka Madulin, talking about another defenseman as well, a very strong defensively sound game that has more offensive upside when he gets the ability. He's in a limited role in the KHL right now, as most prospects are. Just to be an 18-year-old playing in the KHL as it is impressive enough. But he's 6'4", just under 200 pounds, like 178. He had 7 points in 25 games in the KHL this past season. And then the year prior, he had 1 point in 27 games. So again, you're not looking at point production with a guy like him. You're looking at longevity as a reliable, more stay-at-home, but can contribute offensively type defenseman. So two-way, but more stay-at-home if I had to pick between the two at this point in time, at least. he's a guy that I can definitely see over these next, I'd say 3 to 4 years in the lineup. It all
Yeah.
depends on how long is he stuck in the KHL and how much does he have the willingness to want to transition to the NHL as soon as, say, his contract is done with his current team in the KHL. But those are two guys to be excited about. And then getting on to forwards, we'll just talk a little bit more about Alexander Holtz quick. Holtz, we all know this, and a lethal goal scorer truly in the SHL in a limited role. And people need to realize this with guys that are 18-year-olds and are, say, critiquing their numbers. Holtz had 16 points in 35 games in the SHL. If you're a casual, you're probably looking at that as that's nothing crazy. He only had 9 goals and 7 assists. But the guy's playing bottom feeder minutes, at least last season in the SHL, because that's a great men's league. He's gained not even 10 minutes a night, no question. And he's taken full advantage of his opportunities and is fantastic on the power play. This year, he has 7 points in 10 games to start the SHL season in a more increased role. So a guy to be excited about when it comes to pure potential. Holtz has more potential than arguably anyone else. You can make that good argument with a guy like Jack Hughes, but a guy that'll probably transition into the NHL better and have that more reliability is a guy like Holtz. When you're talking about ceiling, I think Jack Hughes can definitely be that guy. Hughes is a guy where every year I expect him to continue to grow. And I'm very curious to see what his true prime is going to be. But what are your thoughts on exactly Holtz, if you want to add on to anything more regarding him? And then we'll expand to say more prospects that we haven't discussed much yet.
Yeah, I'm excited for Holtz. I really am. Whenever you have a player on the wing that can score like that, has to bring excitement, especially with the Devils. There are a bunch of players on this team that are more likely to be a playmaker than a scorer, and we needed that element going further with this team. We don't have a lot of that, and with Palmieri being a question mark with this year, having 1 year left, with Gusev the same thing, having 1 year left, we're gonna need some scores, and Holtz will definitely fill that role. And the thing that most excites me about Holtz is that when they did a recent interview with him, when Matt Laughlin does these things where he talks to the prospects and all the players to see where they're at, especially with everybody on break. And he asked Holtz, is he more excited to play, on a bigger ice surface that you've been playing on or a smaller ice surface? And he says he's more excited to go to a smaller surface because he'll have more less time to get his shot off. He'll be more in a situation where he'll have to think less and react more. So I really like hearing that from his mouth. Everything that Holtz said, I just love how this kid talks. I think he's going to be a phenomenal talent, especially if he's on Hughes' wing. He's got a good frame. He's 6 foot, 183 or 185 pounds. So he's got a good frame to him as well. So I really think he could take checks and give checks as well. And, I'm just excited to see what he has to offer. I really, again, not getting Rossi and Perfetti, bum me out. But when I see the ceiling of what Holtz can be, and they're kind of comparing him to a Forsberg sort of player from Nashville. So I'm excited. I'm excited in that. I think this kid's got an absolute cannon of a shot. He can score from every which way. He can score from the blue line, with his wrist shot. And it's just, he's got such a quick release. That puck whips off his stick and goes straight to the top of the net. And that's got to excite a lot of Devils fans.
That's a great comparison regarding Philip Forsberg from the Preds. I didn't even put that connection before, but I like that idea a lot. Forsberg obviously has more size on him, but I think there's even a good argument to say that he has a higher ceiling, which is saying a lot. This draft class was so unbelievably deep. We have the potential to look back on this 5-10 years from now and say, wow, this was truly one of the best NHL draft classes the league has had, and not just the past decade, but overall. So you should be very excited, and I know you are, regarding a guy like Holtz. He has all the potential in the world to blossom into something great. But then other guys too, whether it's I want to mention them as well because they're more under the radar, and I plan to talk about them because I might be doing a Devils rankings video for their prospects. But Riley Walsh, he has really stood out to me from everything that I've seen of him. A great puck-moving defenseman. He's 6 foot. He was drafted in the 3rd round just a couple years ago in 2017. Playing for Harvard, though, really being a great two-way puck-moving defenseman, power play quarterback. 27 points in 30 games, 8 goals and 19 assists. 31 points in 33 games a year prior. This guy has continued to go up their rankings for the Devils when it comes to their key prospects and could really be a guy coming into the league next year, because I believe he's going to be with Bennington next year. So maybe he's another guy that could get at least a couple games in with the Devils towards the end of the season. I like a cup of coffee. I think that's a possibility. But Riley Walsh really stands out to me as another guy that's going to add to this puck moving defensive depth that the Devils, as we mentioned already, have desperately been needing. And
Yeah.
And then another guy currently playing in college too, and then I'll ask you for your thoughts, is Tyce Thompson. Another guy who has really been, this past season was phenomenal for him. Drafted in the 4th round just a year ago. The 21-year-old right winger, he's 6'1", playing for Providence College. He had 44 points in 34 games, including 19 goals and 25 assists. That is nothing to scoff at the college level. That you cannot take these kind of things with a grain of salt. And normally when you have great college production, that is easily what puts you in higher rankings in your prospect pool. So him lighting up the way he is fantastic. And he had 25 points in 42 games a year prior. So he has seen significant progression over this past year, and is surely a guy that has that potential to be a very solid top 9 winner for the Devils. So what are your thoughts on guys like those? Because I know that they don't get nearly as much talk as, say, other guys in this prospect pool.
Yeah, Riley Walsh is one defenseman that the Devils are really keen on, and we're ecstatic that he signed his entry-level deal, because a lot of Devils fans were worried about him. We thought he was going to do the whole loophole where he was going to go through his collegiate career and just sign anywhere.
Like what Will Butcher did.
Yeah. And so I'm really ecstatic we were able to land him. And when I was watching an interview he did, he was going to play. He was going to finish out his career. But the thing was, with the whole COVID shutdown, he talked to a lot of teammates and a lot of players that were playing on other teams, and they were all signing with who drafted them. So he kind of took a look back. He talked to Fitzgerald, and Fitzgerald kind of said, with the whole uncertainty with the NCAA, maybe it's more worth it to sign. And that's what happened. He ended up signing because of this whole COVID break. And, I think Riley Walsh is going to be a phenomenal player. I know 27 points in 30 games. He's 21 years old. He's a tenacious, quick, shifty defenseman. He's good with and without the puck, and Fitzgerald is really, really high on him. So with our pool of defensemen, we don't have that many offensive defensemen. A lot of our up-and-coming defensemen are more defensive. We have Kevin Ball, Nikita Koityuk. We have Daniil Masiul. A lot of these players are more defensive, big guys.
I like Masiul a lot too. I think he's underrated.
Yeah, me too. He's playing in the KHL, and he looks phenomenal. I really like him, and I think he's going to actually make the team probably quicker than a Koityuk or, maybe even Ball, but I like what Ball has to offer. But we don't have a lot of offensive defensemen, so I'm really ecstatic we were able to lock down Riley Walsh. I think he's going to be a good fit for us. And, size-wise, he's not that bad. He's got a good frame to him, 6 foot, 185 pounds. If he can grow another inch or two and add a couple of pounds, I think he could be a good-sized defenseman. And he's a right-handed shot, so that always helps.
Yeah, exactly. And do you have any thoughts on Tyce Thompson?
Yeah, Tyce Thompson. He really shot up the rankings. He was a 4th-round pick. In the 2019 draft, he's 21. He played with Providence College. He led his team with 19 goals, like you said, 44 points this year. And he really impressed this year. He really had a turnaround in his game. Last year, he put up 25 points. So right then and there, you're seeing from numbers standpoint, he had a big shift. And they said that during the year, he started off slow, but towards the latter portion of the year, he just started developing some sort of shot, and his production just took off. And he totally turned around his play. So, with him, he got better and better as the year went on. He's strong on the puck. He's good along the boards, and he's very creative offensively. And he's another right wing, which this team desperately needs. And he was a nominee for the Hobie Baker Award. So I like what Tyce Thompson has to offer, especially down the pipeline. We could probably see him playing. And, hopefully his brother plays with Buffalo. So you see some lineage there as well.
Oh, he's Tage's brother. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. All right. Well, I guess we'll see what happens with Tage, but let's hope that for Tyce's sake, he can maybe have a more consistent start to his career. Tage has been a very, I want to see what he can do at the NHL level, because he's dealt with some serious injuries, unfortunately.
Yeah. I think Tyce is going to be good. If he could be more consistent and have another production year like he did this year, I think he's going to really, really start turning some heads into this organization and being on the pathway to making this team sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I think the expectation for him is to play one more year in college, play his junior year, and then from there, hoping that everything goes well, then he'll probably sign his ELC. So no rush
Yeah,
with him, but very strong promise and a guy that can be a potential significant guy in that top nine and just adding to that depth. And you can't go wrong for the Devils. They need depth on that right wing as it is. So
yeah.
having guys like Holtz and him as well, Sky truly looks like the limit on that front. But I'm glad you brought up Kevin Ball because him along with Merkley as well, and we'll get to Nolan Foote too. The Devils lucked out so hard when it came to the trades they made and getting the guys that weren't just, decent prospects, but these are guys that are already some of their best ones of their prospect pool, even after this draft. So looking at Kevin Ball, he's a very interesting guy. He's when you look at Ball, he's 6'7", 240 pounds. Like, are you
That's
kidding
a
me?
big boy right there.
He's huge. He's massive.
Yeah.
And the fact that he's second round pick in 2018 by the Coyotes, part of that Hall trade, as we know, but he's been a solid point producer. And that's been interesting too, as a 6'7" defenseman, roughly 250, 31 points in 54 games in the OHL. 6 goals, 25 assists. The year prior, 34 points in 68 games, 6 goals, 20 assists. This guy, we know this, he has a very sound defensive game. He's been a little rough around the edges. His game has been raw in certain aspects, which is why he hasn't necessarily made that entire jump yet to pro hockey. But I think when it comes to Ball, he's in a great spot for the Devils because he's going to have the opportunity there, probably even better than he did in Arizona because Arizona has been pretty deep on their defense, especially with just the more veteran leadership they have on that blue line. The Devils are in a good spot now where, yes, they made some acquisitions, but they're going to bring in whoever they feel is most confident coming in, regardless if they're rookies or brought in through trades. It's a youth movement in New Jersey. We know this. So Ball, I think, is a guy that has that potential to be a solid defenseman for the Devils over these next couple of years. If I had to pick a ceiling, I would probably say a third pair ceiling at this point in time. Maybe he could be a top 4 defenseman, but I think there's more security there with saying that his ceiling will be a nice bottom pair defenseman. So what are your initial thoughts on guys like Ball? And then I would love to break down, other guys that you got in trades, whether it's Nolan Foote and Yanni Kawakinen, because Yanni especially, I was a big fan of with Carolina. So when that trade happened for Vatanen, I was like, ooh, they got a good pick there.
Yeah. Kevin Ball, I mean, when we first heard about the trade, a lot of Devils fans were disappointed because we were looking at all the higher end names that were on Arizona's prospect pool. And when we got Kevin Ball, the first thing you look at is his size. This guy's tremendous. And as I've watched clips of him and I've watched him play with Team Canada, he looked really good out there. And he's getting better and better. He's working on his offensive game. His puck transition, his first outlet pass is pretty good. And he's pretty agile and mobile for a big defenseman. So any forward that's coming down on a player that's 6'7", 240.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
You gotta be shaken because I know I'd be scared. But this kid has a lot to offer, and the thing is that when he's in situations where he has the puck, he doesn't play it safe and skate the line and dump it down like a lot of defensive defensemen do. He takes smart shots. He sets up opportunities in front of the net. He works well, especially when he played the power play. He's getting better and better with his offensive game. But honestly, we brought him in for his play. We need a physical defenseman here. He's just a tower. He's got long reach. He's just a punishing hitter, and that's exactly what's intriguing a lot of Devils fans. We don't have that right now, and we're clamoring to get it. So we're very eager for this guy to make the lineup. And, it excites me. I want to see him don that Devils jersey relatively soon, but it's going to take a little bit of time. But his size is just tremendous. And then, going over to the other players you mentioned, like Yanni Kawakinen, I like what he has to offer. The Devils don't have a lot of power forwards, in my opinion. You can make the argument for Miles Wood. He's kind of a throwback to a power forward, but, he kind of lacks that in some regards with his offensive play. You take away the North-South game from him, and you really don't have that good of a player. But, Yanni Kawakinen, 2016 second-round pick, he's a good skater. He's got good shot. He's really tenacious as far as puck retrieval. He's exactly what the Devils need in regards to playing the front of the net, and we don't have a lot of that. So, I like this trade, bringing him in. He's 22 years old, 6'1", 194 pounds. In Binghamton, when he came over, he played in 4 games, 3 goals, 3 assists, 6 points, earned a quick call-up. And I say it was relatively quick. I didn't think he was going to get called up that fast. And with the Devils, he played 1 game. But, he was, before everything shut down, He was supposed to be playing on a line with Jack Hughes and Mike McLeod.
Mm-hmm.
So I was eager to see what that line was going to play like that night, but that's the night that they shut down the league. So I was kind of bummed out about that. But yeah, I like what this player has to offer. He's good along the boards. He's a big body. He can score. Playing with the Charlotte Checkers last year, 12 goals, 30 assists, 42 points. And I just want to bring up one more thing with Yanni Kuokkanen. He played on Team Finland with Jesse Puljujärvi.
Yep.
There was a huge thing with the whole there was a lot of rumors going around the past 2 years with Miles Wood for Jesse Puljujärvi. If the Devils can somehow do, I know it's not going to be a 1-for-1 trade. It'll probably be more things involved and probably not these players, but getting to the point I wanted to see with Jesse Puljujärvi, he had immense chemistry with Yanni Kuokkanen. Now getting Yanni Kuokkanen, if the Devils have any chance to ever land Jesse Puljujärvi, you try it, especially if the Devils are thin on that right side. I know he's not really the most standout player, with his history with Edmonton. But I think that if you put him on the right team, I think he could really benefit from that. And playing with Kuokkanen would be a good mix. So if the Devils ever down the line were looking to do that, these guys had immense chemistry with each other.
Oh, I want to add on to that as well. Yeah, I mean, Puljujärvi, there's been rumors everywhere. The same thing for the Rangers for a bit was Elias Anderson, Puljujärvi. That didn't come to fruition, as we know. But I've always been a huge fan of Jesse. When it comes to teams that I personally follow, the first team out in the Western Conference I really started following as a kid was Edmonton. So when they weren't good at all, like we're talking right when they started and got Taylor Hall. Like Taylor Hall was one of my favorite players growing up. So when it comes to a guy like Jesse as well, things haven't worked out. He's been misutilized. He was way too rushed into his time with the Edmonton because they have not fared well when it comes to their prospects in the past. So Jesse's a guy. He's now with Edmonton, as we know. I hope for his sake that he thrives. But to your ad, yes, that would be very interesting to see if the Devils do in fact revisit that route if things don't go as planned in the next year with Edmonton, because Puljujärvi should be back in the NHL. He signed a new deal. So great ad as well. And to add on with Kuokkanen again, he looks like a very solid prospect who has been dominating at the AHL level. He's a guy that has done everything in every other league. Now it's just a matter of putting it all together as a mainstay in the NHL level. So he's a guy, he can put up the goal scoring, has strong playmaking ability, and I'm curious to see what he will do at the NHL level, assuming that he gets some type of role throughout next season. I think the opportunities will present itself. I think he's going to be in a good spot to try and crack that bomb six. He is going to have competition with those younger kids though as well. You can even make McLeod is expected to be on the roster, as we know. You can even make the ad with a guy like Maitsev. I know he didn't have a great year in the AHL last year, but I know that he has shown some flashes of brilliance at times. So those are a lot of competition guys there. But then getting on to Nolan Foote, who was probably the biggest acquisition out of all these deals back at the trade deadline. Getting a first-round pick just from the past year for a guy like Blake Coleman, along, I believe, with the first-round pick, because I believe that was a first-round pick from the Canucks in the JT Miller deal. So that's crazy in itself, talking about an overpayment, if you will. But Blake Coleman is still a great player. I understand. It's just, the Tampa did everything they possibly could to make sure that they rounded out their offense and overall team to be the best possible. And, they did exactly that. Now they're paying for it. They went all in. I commend them for that big time. But now you get a guy like Nolan Foote who gets separated from his brother there, which was odd enough. But the left winger, he's 19 years old, 6'4", 200 pounds, has that big body, as we mentioned. Had 33 points in 27 games in the WHL, 15 goals, 18 assists. The year prior, he was a point per game, 66 points in 66 games, 36 goals, 27 assists. He's really put up great numbers in junior in the WHL. He's expected to make that jump probably to the AHL next year, I would assume. I don't believe if he's signed his ELC, so I guess that'll be a to be determined type thing. But Nolan Foote is a guy that they literally got for, a Blake Coleman that realistically probably wasn't going to be on the Devils long term, just because of the direction they were going in. So they really lucked out there with a guy that has top six potential. So I want to know your thoughts on him, because he is someone that really stands out to me as quite the steal for the Devils.
Yeah, Nolan Foote. First thing that you hear whenever anybody is asked about Nolan Foote is his shot. He's got an NHL caliber shot. And I don't know if anybody's ever asked you what's the difference between a hard and a heavy shot. This kid's got a heavy shot. Watching clips of him, anytime he's shooting off the pass, the puck just never seems to go up. It kind of flubbles along the ice. Reading up on him and watching videos on him when he was doing interviews, he said that he uses a lower flex stick. So whenever he puts his power behind it, it doesn't whip up. It kind of travels along the ice.
Okay.
And it makes it really hard for goaltenders to kind of make saves on it. So he uses a weird stick. It's got a low flex and he uses a big curve. So whenever he shoots wrist shots, he said it always goes straight to the top, but his slap shots kind of never go up there. But, I'm looking forward to him. We need players to shoot. Like I said before, we have a lot of playmaking players, but adding Foot, I think, was a genius move that Fitzgerald did. I think you bring in him, and I think it was Shakir with that trade. So you get a good defenseman and a good forward down the line for, like you said, Coleman, who probably would not have signed, as he's hit a ceiling where he could be, where he's a potential 25 plus goal scorer. So it would have been a lot for the Devils to retain him. And at his age, it would have been a big question mark. So I like the route they took. They got a lot back for him. And I really like the way Nolan Foot's going to be. He's got a big time shot. He can play everything. He's a bull on the wall, making a beeline to the net. He's powerful on the puck. And this kid's going to be something special. I'm just curious to see how long he's going to take to develop, when he might see the NHL game, and who he's going to play with is going to be a big thing. Is he a top 2-line guy, which I'm assuming? So, the future's bright for Nolan Foot. I really hope to see him soon because we need players that could shoot on this team, and I think he's going to be one of them.
Yeah, no, he definitely comes off as exactly that. And he's in a great spot too. There's going to be a lot of competition going on over these next couple of years to crack this lineup for the Devils. So we'll see exactly how he does. It's going to be another great progression year for him. I'm expecting him to make that transition to pro hockey, but we'll see. He is still only 19 years of age right now, so they don't necessarily need to push him, if you will. But he, along with other guys that we mentioned too, like Shakir, those two guys in that trade for Coleman essentially are already top 10 prospects for the Devils.
Yeah.
And Foot is definitely up there, and I'm looking forward to talking about him at another time. But they're all great. And to just add a little bit more too, before I let you get out of here, Dawson Mercer, to touch on him a little bit more. He dealt with injuries this past year, which really made his stock when it comes to where is he going to land in that first round very suspect. It was very similar to Peyton Krebs just a year prior for the Vegas Golden Knights, where they pick him up, where Krebs, when healthy, was expected to be a very strong pick. And, there were a lot of teams that were very much thinking that he was going to fall out of the first round because of just a significant injury that he endured. But Vegas still took their shot on him, and things are looking great there in that right. But then when it comes to Mercer, I think you have a great situation because, yes, he is a little raw in aspects of his game, but that goal scoring ability is definitely there. And to have him be drafted this high in this kind of draft just shows you how good he is, because when it comes to the latter half of this first round in the 2020 class, that is very much equivalent to recent drafts of being within your top 10 to top 15. That's how deep this draft was on the offensive side of things. And Mercer, he had 18 points in 16 games this past year in the QMJHL, 6 goals, 12 assists because of his injuries. But the year prior, in just 26 games played, he had 42 points in 26 games, including 18 goals and 24 assists. And then this year thus far, because the QMJHL has already began, he has 7 points in 5 games, including 4 goals and 3 assists. So he's had a great start to the year in the QMJHL. Yes, people do kind of critique that league at times, depending on things versus, say, some other junior leagues. But regardless, a lot of great talents come out of there. And I expect Mercer to be really nothing less than a very strong top 6 forward centerman, at least it would seem, for the Devils, that can probably play the wing, if I had to imagine, if they want to say explore that, because as I've touched on with many other prospect pools that on this channel that I've talked about, the Senators, the LA Kings, among others, they have a lot of great depth on that center front when it comes to their prospects, more key prospects. The Devils aren't far off either, because you have Hughes that's already kind of figuring out, okay, what is going to be better for him? Where are we going to feel the best opportunity? Is it going to be in his natural position at center? Or, maybe is this a better route to have him along the wing, knowing that he's going to be around some, say, better guys? That's why I'm sure they went in hand with having him on the wing to play with Heischer at times last year, trying to help things get rolling a bit and see what that chemistry is like. But then you have a guy like Mercer too. I could see him falling in that similar category. If they want to guarantee him more upside in that top six, and may very well command him to play the wing, should he be able to. I don't know the history on him, how much he has played the wing, if he feels comfortable. So that's a discussion for for another day. But any last words regarding Mercer and any other prospects that we say haven't touched on that ones could argue are ones to be excited about, whether it's McLeod among others?
Yeah, well, with Mercer, I like that pick. I really do. I know a lot of Devils fans weren't eager to get him, but I was ecstatic to get him because I watched a lot of clips on him prior to the draft. He's got this stick handling ability that I haven't seen at his level. You know, he's very good at tucking the puck in tight, getting around players. He can honestly, if he's guarding the line on a penalty kill, he has the ability to give breakaway speed to himself if he's able to get that puck from the guy that has it. He's very smart. He's got high hockey IQ. He's good at giving goes where typically when you pass the guy, whoever you're passing to, when you go straight, make a beeline to the net, he knows exactly to do that instead of coasting around. So he's got hockey IQ that's very high, very smart player. He knows where to be positionally, and he's not that much of an outside scorer. He doesn't have that good of a shot, but he can score a lot of goals in tight. So I really like what I see from Dawson Mercer. I like the draft. I really, as far as getting him, I like because he can play center. He can play right wing. You don't know what's going to happen with Zacha long term if he's going to be a Devil. I hope so. I like Zacha as far as his defensive play, not his offensive play. To be drafted at sixth overall, that's a question mark. But especially when you had all the players around him be so much better than he is now. He's still trying to find his game while other players are, already established what they are. But I think Mercer's going to be a good pick for us. They're saying he could be a young Patrice Bergeron. So when you're watching clips of him, you kind of see visions of that. But I think he's a good player. He's a good puck handler. He's a good scorer. He's got good speed. So what else more can you ask for? And as far as like other players, I like Fabian Zetterlund. I'm high on him for some reason. He played with Binghamton. He's 21, right wing, 5'11", 218 pounds. So his proportion is pretty good, very thick. This year he was a third round pick. Not this year, but he was a third round pick when he was drafted in Binghamton. He had 8 goals, 11 assists, 19 points in 46 games. So he's got a good shot. He's got a good motor, good speed. So I know Fitzgerald wanted to bring him up towards the end of this year after the trade deadline happened. He talked very high on Fabian Zetterlund, possibly playing some games towards the end of the year. And, some other players that I like in our system, of course, Nathan Bastian, I think he might crack the lineup this year. He's 22 years old, the right wing, 6'4", 205 pounds. He was a 2016 second round pick. And, I like the way he plays because he needs to play in front of the net. And I like that. We don't have a lot of guys like that. He's got good size. He's been working on getting his penalty minutes down, and his production each year has gone up in Binghamton. The first year he played, he had 18 points. The second year he played at 24 points, and this past year he had 38 points. And they project him to be at his highest ceiling, kind of like a JVR sort of player. So I'm really high on Bastian. I like his size, and I like how he adds element that this Devils team currently doesn't have playing. And another player that I'm really looking forward to, Arnt Talvidi. He played with Team Finland when they won with Capo Caco.
Oh,
and
yeah.
He was the captain of that team, and he played so well that year. He had an unfortunate injury where he tore his ACL, and his production this past year wasn't that good. In 30 games playing with Penn State, he had 6 goals, 13 assists, 19 points.
Not terrible for the college level, though. Not at all.
It's not. And dealing with an injury like that, it's hard to rebound. So it depends on this year how he plays. I really like this guy. I really always like watching him play. He's a strong player. Erica Wachter interviewed him this past year when they do those little breaks in between the periods, and they have the prospects to keep an eye out on. And he was one of them. And this guy's pretty stout, man. He's a big guy. He's got a low center of gravity, 5'10", 198 pounds. He was a late round pick, and he plays an excellent two-way game. So, and he was a captain on Finland. So he adds those leadership qualities to the Devils. That'd be good down the line.
Great points. I'm glad that you brought up I'm gonna butcher his name, but the Finnish guy playing for Penn
Yeah.
State, because I meant to mention him in this video too, because from a lot of the things that I've read in the clips that I've seen on him, people do view highly of him and possibly cracking that top 10 when it comes to this prospect pool, which is
Yeah.
telling of exactly, we'll see how long it takes him to hit the NHL level, but he has been having some solid years past couple years with Penn State, so things to be looking forward to. And I think to wrap up this video, I just want to ask you on one more guy, because when I was doing plenty more research on him, because I obviously don't watch Devils prospects to the same extent that I say do other teams, but Michael McLeod, I want your thoughts on him, because he is a guy that, we know started off really hot in his junior career. His final year in juniors, things really didn't look the same. And then since then, he has very much been fluctuating with his production in the AHL level. There is expectation for him to get some time in the AHL next year, if not full-time, then at least part-time. But it seems like what was once a very highly coveted prospect for the Devils has quickly diminished into being a guy that could almost be a fringe NHL player. So what are your thoughts on McLeod?
Oh man, this is a tough one. I know a lot of Devils fans like him because they see what he can, a potential of what he can be. But that year, I remember leading up to the draft, I was reading articles about him, and the one article I read right before the draft started, why the Devils should not draft Michael McLeod, and who do we draft? Michael McLeod. I was hoping that year we kind of would have went for a defenseman. Jacob Chikrin really fell, and I really wanted
he's
him.
awesome.
Yeah, and look at the player he's become.
Mm-hmm.
I really wanted to get him that draft, and after you draft a guy and you watch clips and everything, you get excited for him and you hope he could be something. But McLeod has always fell short. But this past year, you did see some sort of change in his play when he came up for those handful of games he played with Jersey. He still has that element to me where a lot of players know what players do, and when they know Mike McLeod is always going to pass the puck, guess what? If he's on 2-on-1, not to go towards him. To go towards the shooter because he's not going to shoot the puck. He's going to like to pass. So McLeod's got to add some stuff to his game. He's got to add another arsenal of shot to his game. He's got speed. He's got the ability to be a tenacious forward, be aggressive. I know that's what the Devils' mold is. They want aggressive forwards, and he could be that. He's just got to still develop, but he's getting older and older. And but he did make some leaps this year, playing in those handful of games. So I don't know. The future's kind of still uncertain with him, but hopefully he can break through and be a player for the Devils. But Bastian was drafted in the second round the same year. I know they're buddies, but I'm more high on Bastian than I am with McLeod at this point.
Yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head regarding him, because again, it's kind of an unfortunate situation, especially when you try to give the player the benefit of the doubt, and we all feel that way. There are always prospects that just don't come to fruition, if you will. Time and age is still on his side, so there are things to be excited about with him regardless, but I do like everything that you add on his front. But I think we really hit it all regarding this NHL team and the New Jersey Devils and why they have such a coveted future, and that's why I wanted to talk about them and have you on here, because there are a lot of teams in the NHL currently that are having strong prospect pools, but what the Devils have done in this past year has been so significant and so drastic and kind of a culture change, as we mentioned, that I really think is going to propel them into a recipe of success over these next 5-10 years. Bringing in guys like Holtz, as we mentioned, Mercer, already having a core when it comes to that center depth, and Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier, it's not like they were just first overall picks or anything. Like these are good players that, for Hughes' case, has a great ceiling. We don't even know exactly what Hughes is going to do when he's fully in his prime, but it should be fantastic if his time with the U.S. national development team was any indication, because he was amazing. So we saw those flashes with him in his rookie year. It's just a matter of finding that consistency, getting more accustomed to playing at the NHL level and being more bigger bodied in that sense. He's going to do it. He's going to do it just fine, in my opinion. He's kind of similar, not in the sense of Patrick Kane. When Patrick Kane came in the league right away, he's fantastic, but similar build. And Patrick Kane has still managed to be able to withstand hits just in the way he plays, because you don't see him getting laid out often, just because of how aware his hockey awareness. Like every time he's in the offensive zone, very rarely will you see a guy like Patrick Kane get hit, because he's so nimble with his skating and he's just keeping his head up the entire time. Hughes falls right in that category for me. And I think he's going to be one of the better playmakers the NHL has to offer over these years. And same thing with a lot of these other guys in the lineup. And Ty Smith, I'm really excited about what the future holds for him. And that young core of goaltenders with Mackenzie Blackwood, that is another thing that I think is going to help propel the Devils over these next couple of years in this rebuild, because they have a young, controllable goaltender that is playing some great hockey. They don't need to worry about, say, having a constant goalie carousel of a rotation in and out every couple of years with signings. Mackenzie Blackwood has that potential to be their guy for by far the next 5 years. So a lot of great things to be excited about the Devils. And if there's anything else you'd like to add before we finish this off, go ahead.
Yeah, and with going back to Jack Hughes, like you saw Kotkaniemi, how he before they went back into play with Montreal, this past with the whole playing round thing, he added size during the break that they had, and look at the player he was from before then to after.
He made huge strides.
So we've seen pictures going around Instagram and other stuff like that about how Hughes has been working out, and he does look like he's added some muscle. So I'm curious to see what he can do if he adds a good amount of weight on, adds some strength, because, even with Quinn Hughes, he didn't necessarily go straight into the NHL. I think he had a year off, and look at the player he became. Not that I wanted to see that happen with Jack, but it's one thing that time does help, and we didn't set him up right. We needed wingers to help him out, help him ease his game, and it's got to be a knock to him too, because coming from every year and every league you played in, you're so successful.
You're the best player in the league.
Yeah, and then you come to really basic a league where you're basically starting down from the bottom and working your way up again. So
it's a reality check.
I know Hughes definitely has that competitive edge to him, and I know he's going to be a fantastic player. I know there's been comparisons to Patrick Kane. I hope he can get there, as Devil fans are all ecstatic about that. But I like what we're seeing with the Devils. Currently ranked 2 in the prospect pool, behind the Rangers 1, and they got a phenomenal prospect 2 pool with the Rangers. But, the Devils, you're actually seeing a lineup starting to form in the future. You're seeing Hischier and Hughes down the middle. If Zaka's still around, you see him as that third-line center, or you could see Mercer in that spot. You're seeing Holtz on that right wing side with Mercer possibly, with Graham Clark making it, with Tice Thompson. On the left side, you're seeing Boquist, Kuokkanen, Foote. You're seeing a shape-up of a team offensively, and I really like the mold that Fitzgerald is really adding to this team. They're adding a lot of pieces, and you can actually start to see where they might end up playing down the line. And even our defense, too, with adding Smith eventually coming up, and Riley Walsh and Kevin Ball. You have a Koyuk, you have Musil. You have a lot of promising defensemen that are on the radar. And, these defensemen that they've been drafting and acquiring, they're big guys. So we're going to have a big defense for other teams to play against. So, the future's bright for the Devils, and, I'm really ecstatic about it, because a couple of years before, we couldn't say this. We had the oldest team in the league, and now we're one of the youngest team in the league with a lot of upside to our forwards, defense, and goaltending. So, the future's bright for the Devils, and I'm anxious to see it. It's going to be good and fun.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I can tell you honestly, I'm ecstatic to see what is going to happen between this rivalry with the Rangers and the Devils as they continue developing. The Rangers obviously have a step ahead because they're in a different spot. But when the Devils really round out their game and they get these key prospects to blossom, because a lot of these are grade A prospects, it's going to be a really fun rivalry across the Hudson. So I'm very much looking forward to it. And I'm really excited to see what the future holds for this team. So seriously, thank you again, Joe, for coming on the channel. It means an absolute ton. This has been so fun doing this conversation, talking about your favorite team in the Devils, and I hope everyone watching, you guys enjoy this too. But if you haven't checked out his channel, make sure you do, and if you want to tell people where they can find you, either on social media or on your YouTube, go ahead, and then I'll get you out of here.
Yeah, thanks, Ty. I really appreciate you doing this. It's been a blast. Continued success with your channel. You're doing great things, and it's going to be fun. And if you ever want to do this again, you know how to contact me. We could do it again during the year. And if anybody wants to watch my channel, go ahead. Subscribe to Tyler's channel, Wardy NHL. Subscribe to my channel, the Hockey Skatedown. Thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you again, Joe. I'll talk to you soon.
You too, buddy. Thank you so much.
All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to check out Joe's channel, the Hockey Skatedown. I'll have in the description down below, but another great hockey YouTuber, a great guy overall too, and just has awesome hockey content. And if you're a Devils fan in particular, he is your guy, way over me, for instance. You got to make sure to check out his channel. Great Devils content, great hockey content overall. Can't say enough good things. And I want to know your thoughts in the comments below. How high do you view and covet this New Jersey Devils team going forward in this prospect pool? How bright of a future do you believe they have? Because I can tell you personally, even as a Rangers fan, I know their future is unbelievably bright, and I'm so excited to see what this young core group can do going forward. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Check out previous videos. Check out my previous video. I know the video got messed up in it too, but it won't for next time I do a collaboration with him. But Earl Skaken, the celebrity, honestly, that I did in my last video, talking about the LA Kings, that was an awesome conversation. Make sure to check it out, and check out other videos if you haven't regarding my top 20 NHL prospects going into next season, and in general, make sure to check it out. That was a lot of fun, among other things. Thank you all so much, guys. Check out other videos regarding this series as well in my playlist I'll have available, and I'll talk to you again real soon.